I'm Hanish Patel, and this is User Friendly, the show where we explore emerging trends in tech, media, and telecom, and how they impact business, operations, and the world around you. While familiar themes continue to dominate technology headlines, this year brings new opportunities for growth in emerging markets. The time is right for companies to seriously consider exploring the advantages of these technologies, including strategies to deliver solutions that drive true business outcomes for customers. Here today to share his outlook on the technology industry for 2020 is Deloitte Global Technology, Media and Telecommunications Industry Leader and US Technology Sector Leader, Paul Salome. Paul, thanks for joining me today. Really excited to have you on the pod.
It's absolutely my pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this very important conversation.
Sounds good. So let's dive straight into it. So there are a few technologies we've seen in prior years that companies continue to embrace, such as cloud computing, AI adoption, so artificial intelligence. Where do you see the opportunities for growth in 2020?
Well, I think 2020, to a certain extent, is going to be a bit of back to the future, as we will continue to see strong growth in cloud and in the adoption of AI for the enterprise. While most companies use the cloud in one way or another, there's still a tremendous amount of growth to be achieved as they begin to optimize their workloads. They start fine-tuning choices on what should be in the cloud or what might remain on-prem, or ultimately, what might function best in hybrid environments. AI tools have also become increasingly user-friendly, and they're available through cloud platforms, which will continue to drive adoption as well. And the growth we'll see will not only be for cloud providers, but also for the companies that produce cloud infrastructure and software applications that run on cloud environments.
Paul, I do like the fact you teased in the term user-friendly in your response in that one with the name of our podcast. But to that AI point, more and more, certainly with some of the clients I'm talking to, they're saying how critically important AI is becoming to their organizations. And we're hearing the same for cloud. From your perspective, should companies be investing in both? Is it one or the other, or is it having that right blend and mix to really take advantage of those emerging technologies?
I think I would choose door number 3. It's having the right mix.
Right.
It's not an either or,
Mm-hmm.
it is and.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a synchronicity that comes from investing in both because, as I mentioned, in the cloud platforms, these AI capabilities that were originally created for use internally by those providers of cloud services have been made available in a variety of APIs that are, I said user-friendly, they're accessible and they're really having the impact of, to a certain extent, democratizing AI because you don't necessarily have to have a crew of data scientists in order to utilize the tools that are available in the cloud. So small and mid-sized businesses may be able to find value in those types of tools as well. But right sizing is, I think, very important. You don't want to over-index, but you do want to think very carefully about your fact pattern, your company's situation, and try to extract those areas that add the most value.
Got it. And certainly, while cloud computing and AI are not new this year, you mentioned in your outlook that 2020 could really be the breakout year for edge computing. So 2 things around that. 1, could you help our listeners understand edge computing? And 2, why do you think it's going to be that breakout year?
Sure. When we talk about edge computing, just think about devices and power out at the perimeter of the network as opposed to centralized into the cloud.
Right.
Just as an example. And I think if we dig into this, we've talked about IoT, the Internet of Things, for more than a decade, and we've seen a steady rise in its adoption. But the extraordinary increase in compute power in edge devices, so phones, processors, and sensors, is really creating the ability to process large volumes of information and make decisions at the edge of the network or the point of application, as opposed to solely in the cloud. And the availability of this low latency, fast, reliable, portable compute power is making a vast array of IoT applications now affordable and practicable. Because of this, we expect to see edge computing driving really a considerable amount of growth this year.
What does that all mean for consumers like you and I? But also, can you share an example of an enterprise level business application of that?
Sure. If you think about consumers, we talk a lot about this personalization and the customer experience.
Right.
The more and more power that we push out to the edge, the greater the opportunity for immediate personalized interaction. I think there are a lot of really nice examples of how that is affecting consumers. I'm really excited about some of the live stadium experiences that are being created, as an example, where you can be in an arena watching whatever your favorite event is. It could be the Olympics, it could be football, it could be basketball, and you can personalize the stats that you follow, the experience that you're having, and make the game fit the information that you want to have, as opposed to just anything that's fed to you through the PA system, right? So that's, I think, a neat example. And for the enterprise, oh gosh, it's almost an unlimited landscape where we're seeing possibilities that are starting to impact everything from shipping and transportation, distribution, logistics, manufacturing, agriculture, retail, healthcare. It's really permeating the fabric of how business is done. And you can also think about the fact that most work is done away from a desk. Right. So this whole notion of the untethered workforce. Now, most of us work away from a desk, but most of us would be better at our jobs if we had access to a computer while we're performing our work. And so this idea of devices at the edge that help us be more effective in our employment positions also enhances the customer experience, but at the same time, it's really fundamentally transforming the way work gets done.
Let's stick on that enterprise level. And if I consider the outlook from last year, you emphasize the growing importance of partnerships as a strategic tool that every technology company should employ. What strategies are tech companies using to facilitate growth, or will do, in 2020?
The trend towards partnering or even multiplayer alliances, I think, will continue. It's on a strong trajectory. And most every strategic discussion now has 3 dimensions. Used to be 2. Should I buy or should I build? Now it's 3. Should I buy, should I build, or should I partner? And partnering is increasingly a desirable option when considering speed to market, cost effectiveness, and the need to string together best-in-breed assets through multiplayer environments to create valuable end-to-end solutions for customers.
So taking that, like you say, that third option of should I partner, and if we're seeing more and more of these partnering and partnerships taking place, how do you feel that's going to impact the M&A activity? Is it going to be more or less, or just the same that we've seen over the last number of years in the tech space?
Yeah, it's a great question, because you would think intuitively it would be less, because if I can partner, why do I need to acquire? But we think of M&A as the whole envelope of transactions, mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, and a lot of companies are trying to position. So if you think about that story of end-to-end solutions for customers, many companies are starting to realize that they might have what they believe is an end-to-end solution, but from the customer lens perspective, they might have world-class assets for a component of a true end-to-end value proposition. And they are actually finding that in some cases their competitors may have other assets. And so if you boil this into how does this relate to mergers, acquisitions, and divestiture decisions, a lot of companies are realizing that in order to compete and for their strongest assets to really truly break away and become best in breed, they have to reallocate their capital towards those. And it means perhaps they're divesting from other assets that they've been building that are maybe not leading. And so there's a lot of sort of repositioning of the internal enterprise. And in other cases, there are assets that companies see in the marketplace that are developing that they believe would enhance their value proposition. So we're actually seeing more merger, acquisition, divestiture activity as there's a massive amount of positioning happening in the marketplace.
What you're saying there actually just triggered a point in my mind, and you made a really interesting point in your outlook this year where you said a strategy no tech company can afford to overlook is building that diverse workforce. And diversity and inclusion in tech is a topic we covered last season, and it's certainly very important for businesses and individuals. Why is it crucial that companies consider diversity and inclusion in their business model as well?
Well, I actually think diversity is a business imperative. In every dimension, having a diverse workforce creates, you think about it, better strategy, better products, better services, and better decision making. And that area is really important. In the world of AI, with the fundamental challenges of bias in algorithms that are increasingly relied upon to drive business outcomes, it has an impact there as well.
So let's take that AI point, and certainly something we've been hearing over the years, and we've seen more and more the introduction of robotics in the enterprise. And if you couple robotics and AI and put them together, does diversity and inclusion become more or less of an issue over time if the workforce is now more and more likely to be, how should we put it, replaced by robots, replaced by algorithms?
I think it depends on exactly what application we're talking about. If it's solely a transition from a rote manual process that can be automated, where there's objectivity required, where there's no cognitive processing required, I think we're absolutely fine.
Right.
When you think about this area of enhancing and sort of people working with machines and enhancing decision making, cognitive processes, then it becomes increasingly important, because if we don't have diversity in the software engineering and the design and the creation of the algorithms that humans are trying to rely on to help enhance decisions, then that bias tends to drive through into the outcomes that are produced. So I think about a sort of a person and machine world together, where in that arena, we have to have not only on the person side diversity, but also on the algorithm AI side in the creation of the tools that humans will rely on to make better decisions. We've got to cover it across all dimensions.
Got it. So certainly, I think even with the further introduction of robotics and AI, there really is a clear opportunity to make sure diversity and inclusion is, how should I put it, injected into that process as companies are thinking about it.
Exactly. Not just an opportunity, a social imperative, a business imperative.
I like that. Yeah.
Right.
So then I want to move us to something I tend to ask a lot of my guests around, just what are some of the challenges or even pain points that companies should consider when implementing new and emerging trends like we've talked about? And in this case, what should businesses be mindful of as they plan to grow, and how they can help prepare themselves for some of these potential challenges that are coming forward in 2020 and beyond?
Well, globally, the regulatory environment is increasingly complex, as many governments address varying cultural views on data ownership and privacy, or national security is, of course, a concern. Also, very importantly, countries are addressing the taxation of the digital economy. Unfortunately, each emerging regime is uniquely approaching each issue, which is creating both complexity and uncertainty for those making business decisions. The regulatory environment is going to continue to be a challenge for all enterprises. Additionally, as we've talked about, ethics in AI and how to prepare the workforce for the dramatic change in how work gets done in a person-with-machine world are foundational challenges that will need to be addressed in the coming year.
So if I think about that, and if that kind of moves us to maybe a singular infrastructure or a single platform, who would police that?
That's a great question, and I think it is one of the primary opportunities and challenges that we face at the global level. There's, as I mentioned, a lot of concern about national security. Where does data sit? Who has access to data? Should it be sovereign and within the borders of country X or country Y? And then there's this massive opportunity of a connected world and the ability to share information, the opportunity to solve some of the biggest challenges in the world around clean water and agriculture and education. And so this is sort of a difficult set of circumstances that we're trying to work our way through. I think history has shown that where we emerge with standards that all join on in platforms, we tend to get consistency. And we've seen that across multiple areas of development over the years. But in some areas, we have seen divergence from standards, right? Not everybody in the world drives on the same side of the road.
That's for sure.
Right?
I mean, Paul, the way that I look at it is, like you say, it's going to take some time, I think, to your point, right? To kind of work out whether it's how it's policed, who polices it. I mean, this is really fascinating stuff that we're all excited to see how this kind of emerges and unfolds. Anything else our listeners should be thinking about, particularly around as we move into 2020, and any final thoughts on the outlook?
Yeah, I think what is most important is that in spite of the headwinds we discussed, this is not a time when companies can sit on the sidelines and wait for clarity. We will likely be living with these challenges for the foreseeable future. Companies, nevertheless, need to press onwards with their efforts to seize advantage in a rapidly changing world, and also, at the same time, to transform the way their businesses operate. It's a brave new world that's emerging, and it's an exciting time for tech companies.
And to my listeners, if you haven't already, be sure to check out the 2 other episodes in our 3-part Industry Outlook series, where Deloitte industry leaders will be sharing their perspective on trends to watch out in the coming year. Tune in for our Telecom, Media and Entertainment Outlook with Kevin Westcott and our Sports Outlook with Pete Giorgio. And until next time, happy listening. The opinions expressed by guests on this podcast belong to them and do not necessarily reflect those of Deloitte. Thanks for listening to User Friendly. To subscribe or listen to more episodes, search for Deloitte User Friendly in your favorite podcatcher or find us online at userfriendly.deloitte.com.